8 steps to getting a stronger, better hold and repair for plaster walls. Or any walls really, but primarily plaster walls.
Boy, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to repair this wall. Full of cracks, chipped off plaster, chipped off paint, cracks on the edges there. But not only repair it, I'm going to show you how to get better results. So, step 1 is measure your FibaFuse. Yes, I'll be using a 3-foot FibaFuse later on, but you should measure it first right now because you will have great difficulty measuring it later when you have a wet mudded wall to deal with. Step 2, after you have measured, is use mesh tape on all the cracks in the wall. Now, I have a method of getting the mesh tape to adhere even stronger and better than just applying it like this, but since I will be using the FibaFuse later to cover this whole thing, I did not need to use my longevity patch, as I call it. I'll make another video teaching that method later on. Tune in for that. Now, when you're ripping this tape, you hold your putty knife or 5-in-1 at a 45-degree angle and then rip the tape upwards. If your angles aren't right, it doesn't tear properly and leaves little bits hanging out. It helps a lot. You don't have to have a knife on you or anything like that. And step 3 is floating over your mesh with Quickset. Now, it has to be a Quickset type mud because these muds are simply stronger and they dry faster, so you can do more work right away a lot quicker. They don't sand very well though, so if you are using a heavier Quickset, aka one with less time, you'll want to scrape off all the little bits and do as little sanding as possible. Generally you apply those first, which is what I'm doing now.
Don't use it as a finishing layer. Generally, if you're doing any extensive mudding work that requires multiple layers, you start off with the harder mud, the Quickset stuff. That way you can just scrape it off and then mud over it with an easier sand mud. And then that mud that you mud over this will be your sanding layer. So you go from hardest mud to softest mud.
It doesn't have to look absolutely immaculate because we're covering all of this. So you want to focus more on just putting it on, smoothing it out as much as possible. Don't worry too much about how it looks. Typically I would use tape in the corners, but that wasn't necessary. Most of the time I just I do all the patching and everything prime and then caulk them with a flexible caulking, which I do in another video.
And the next step is to fill any gaps or leftover craps that you didn't tape over, any divots, pits, anything that will cause your mud to sink. So just pre-fill all that.
Because you don't want any mud to be sunk in any spot, so you can apply a nice even extra wall, I guess, is what the end result of this is going to be. I did do other work in this closet as well. I cut the most of it out, but there was a crack there.
And a bunch of other stuff in the closet, cracks, repairs, lath and plaster repair. I cut some new shelves for this from the old shelves. And this wall eventually became feature wall. But all that stuff will be in future videos. I'm trying to keep this video short and stick to just doing a stronger plaster repair of these cracks.
Now when I'm filling these cracks, I'm actually pushing the knife down hard so that the mud squeezes out the end of the knife. And using that, I'm pushing the mud into the crack. It's a technique. But that's how you get them to fill cracks like that in the wall or areas that you need it to flow into. So you press hard and you make the mud actually come out the top of the knife. And after drying, the next step is scraping all the high spots and edges. Now this is very important because you want to minimize the amount of little bits and runners that get caught in your mud when you're trying to fill this out. This is primarily to adhere the tape and give it strength. Get all the dried over raised spots out. Step 6 is now we're floating the wall with Quickset 90 mud. Now, Quickset 90 is good because you want to have a longer work time. I know there's some YouTubers out there that tell you that the numbers depend on your skill level. That's only partially true. You have to think more in terms of the job itself and how much work you have to do and how long it's going to take and how much time do you need. For this step, I need to apply the mud but still have it workable for long enough for me to embed the FibaFuse. So 90 mud gives you that extra time to do that. Because the last thing you want is for it to dry. Now some may argue, oh, just mud the wall faster. Well, that's not really the point. The point is, if you're a DIYer and a new person, it's better for you to start off with a longer dry time and just casually work your way into the lower dry times. So 90-minute mud would be the easiest for you to use in the beginning and even at the end. Because you see that bucket full of mud that I have there? It would be such a shame if after 15 minutes all that's set up and I couldn't even use it and I had to throw it out. You gotta plan for the job that you're doing, how much mud you need, how soon you can use it,
and how long you need it to stay wet for.
Is a big thing. And we need this mud to be still wet for the next stage, which we will do immediately after. I typically do the edges like this first because when you float the wall after, if you already have mud at the edges, then you're less likely to have holes and spots like that around the edges where mud is not as filled. And if you do, you have more mud there that you can sand it off later or fill it if you needed to. If you didn't get around to filling it, you can sand it off. But now I'm using a hot trowel fill in the liner spots. And as you can see, I don't have to really try as hard around the edges because I've already filled them. So I don't have big gaps and spots like that. So that's the same process as with painting, is you want to do all the cutting and then fill in the rest most of the time. Also the same thing as painting is you want to remove any harsh edges when you're doing any form of mudding or plastering or any of this stuff. Is generally you want to try not to leave lift lines, raised marks, or gouges in your mud, unless it doesn't matter, which right now it doesn't. Because the next step is simply going to cover all this. I'm a painter by trade, so I've used the pan and knife quite a bit, and I quite like the hawk and trowel. What do you guys think? What do you like better, pan and knife or hawk and trowel? Leave it in the comments. As much as possible, I like to use the hawk and trowel, but most jobs that you have to do don't typically require the hawk and trowel, as this is more along the lines of drywall work. And if you were doing a lot of drywall or
Plaster,
often, you'd be using this tool a lot more, because it's so much easier to use in terms of like less strenuous on your fingers and wrist for long term than the knife. It's a lot easier to use in terms of like which muscles you need to use. And there's different ways to use it when you get tired. While I was painting, I picked up being ambidextrous, which I think is very important for doing a lot of different work, especially painting. Because when you do something repetitively the whole time,
you can get tired and eventually wear out your limbs and cause long-term damage on your body.
So being able to take a break and use the other side is important. Step 7. Now I'm embedding the FibaFuse into the still wet 90-minute Quickset. FibaFuse is a fiberglass sheet, thin membrane that can be used to seal off any bad areas such as this, or worse, that you pre-filled. It's just extra precaution to put everything back behind the FibaFuse. So now all the repairs that we did are extra reinforced. Don't let it fool you in how thin it looks and how flimsy it seems to be, because when the mud actually permeates into this, it provides an extremely strong hold. A much stronger hold than paper. The reason why is because the mud actually saturates into the FibaFuse fiberglass layer, because there's little holes in it. It's fiberglass, as you see there. The mud actually goes through that and into it, which is something that still happens with the paper, but not to this degree. The FibaFuse and the mud will become one. And separating them is going to be very difficult, if not impossible. And step 8, now we start floating another coat of Quickset over this FibaFuse that we just embedded. And we could do this immediately, so make yourself up another set of mud This time, since we no longer need it to be wet after, you can use a faster setting Quickset. So, maybe a Quickset 45. If you're comfortable with it, you could go 30 or even 15. If you are comfortable with working at that speed, then go ahead. This really strengthens it a lot, having this extra layer of Quickset over the FibaFuse, and having repaired those cracks beforehand with the mesh tape. This kind of repair, this is gonna last. Granted, nothing you do is ever going to be stronger than a shifting house. So, if your house has foundation issues and is constantly shifting and cracking, you might get like a wrinkle or something, but those cracks will not come back. So because we had done this beforehand, when we laid down the FibaFuse, it had a nice flat layer of mud to sit on, so you don't have any gaps or anything like that, little air pockets. There are literally none. And those air pockets can be troublesome if you don't get them all out, because they are basically weaknesses in your taping. And this applies for all taping. Like if you have any air in your tape as you're taping it, that spot eventually, if not immediately, will start to bubble, and it will be a weak point where the tape will eventually give way in that spot. So, same thing with FibaFuse. You want to make sure that there's no air pockets. However, one of the more forgiving aspects of FibaFuse is because it's a more porous material, the air can more easily come through. So you could easily just mud over it if you see any air pockets, and it will work. The mud will go through it and get to the other side. You don't have to remove it and then redo it. So FibaFuse has a lot of aspects, and I don't mean FibaFuse the brand, because it is the brand's name as well, but FibaFuse the product, which is this fiberglass sheet that comes in the 3-inch, 6-inch, or 3-foot that I have here. I'm not paid by them or anything, I'm just telling you what this product is and why I'm using it to get a better result. Anytime I can, I use this, but I wouldn't tape a whole house with it. For fixing cracks or anything like that, or doing a whole wall like this, it's perfect. It makes the job easy. Though as much as possible, I would definitely recommend using gloves whenever you handle it, because your hands and your arms and whatever touches it can get a little itchy if you don't, due to all the fiberglass fibers that come off it. It's abrasive.
And I didn't have gloves here because, well, I don't like to have gloves while I'm mudding. But definitely when you're installing it, you should wear gloves. While you guys are watching me do this, let me know if you like the ASMR style better, or do you like it better with some nice music in the background while working.
I'm continuing the process, floating in the middle part. this layer, you still want to try to get it nice and smooth, but you still don't have to try that hard to get it perfect, because the finishing layers take care of the minor imperfections. Just get your mud on as fast as possible and even it out. When your mud starts to dry out, you have issues. So that's why it's important not to be too finicky, especially if you're using a faster setting Quickset. Because even this is not the finished layer. When you're spreading around the mud evenly, try and mud from many different directions, because it allows your mud to fill in holes and whatever from different angles, so you can get air pockets out and fill it a lot easier. Apply, spread around, and then smooth out after you're done applying. It seems simple in concept, but I know there's lots of people who do struggle with making nice floated out walls or patches and all that stuff. I'll do a different video to show how to patch properly, so that you have the easiest time possible not only doing it but sanding it, and you'll be able to do touch-ups that are invisible. At this point, I'm just trying to make sure every part of the FibaFuse has been covered. All those ridges and everything that remain, I'm just not going to mess with it, because this is not the finished aspect, although that is everything you need to know about making a strong hold.
Unfortunately, I have to show you the full finished product in another video, because for this video it was primarily about using the FibaFuse and strengthening your wall repair. And we are going to make this wall a feature wall after finishing that closet and the trim and cutting new shelves. Stay tuned for that.